That was Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Mark Harrell, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford were the five.
Yeah, that game was sponsored by fucking Tylenol, by the way.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues on the basketball episode. Not a lot going on NBA news-wise, trade stuff heating up, which is good, but less dramas. A little bit out there, but not much. And then the NBL at the tail end before the playoffs start. So a lot to get through today. Pro, what's going on?
Little somber today, Bogues. Landman had the season finale today, actually. So I'm not a Landman anymore, so I'm looking for new shows. I do recommend a show, though, Bogues, you should watch. Tires on Netflix. I don't know if you guys get it.
I've seen a
there,
couple of episodes of that. Yeah, it's hard to stay into it for 30 odd minutes, but there's some good one-liners. Yeah,
it's the best bad show on streaming right now. It's so bad of a show. It's like Tulsa King. It's just a bad show, but it's like you go for the front runner, you know. So
yeah, he's
definitely
good. He's funny as what's his name? The comedian
Gillis. Shane Gillis?
Shane Gillis, yeah, he's funny.
Yeah.
But Landman's on my list. I'm going to start that actually this week, so I'm looking forward to that. I just watched have you seen the 7-5? I think it's called the 7-5.
I have not.
Is it the 7-5? Pretty sure it is. It's an old documentary about a precinct in New York that had one of the most corrupt police officers
in New York
of all time. It was the 7-5. Yeah, the 7-5. It's called the 7-5. So watch that. It's just a 1.5 hour doco, and it's about one of the most corrupt police officers. They said this guy was like basically a rogue criminal with a badge, just like extorting people and like, you know, they'd show up to domestic violence cases, they'd rob the people, like they'd split them up and then go take their cash and valuables, just shit like that, right?
Like the cop from American Gangster.
Like that, but yeah, this guy was like, and then he was paid protection for one drug gang in that area, and then messing with all the other drug gangs. It's pretty interesting stuff. I heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast. The guy was on there about 5 years ago, so I watched the doco. It's old. It's like early 2000s, but it's quite
Netflix.
Nah, so you can just see it on YouTube for free. So I know a lot of my listeners will appreciate that. It's a free one. You don't have to pay for it, but that's one I just got done. But anyway, let's get into basketball, Pro. Team of the week, who you got?
I'm going to go with Cleveland, Bogues. I mean, how can't you beat Oklahoma City? I was going to go with actually Indiana of all teams. You know, they won 5 in a row, undefeated this week, but the teams just weren't good enough. Compared to Cleveland winning 12 in a row, beating Oklahoma City, those guys are on a roll. I think I had them last week too. I mean, they're ridiculous, man. They, they're on all cylinders, just playing really, really well. And, you know, not just a team that, you know, came out of November or December, doing well. They're not front runners at all. They're playing well. They just, Donovan Mitchell and Mobley and Allen and all of those guys, the bench, they've done a great job.
Yeah, they're doing really well. And knocking off OKC in that game a couple of nights ago, big win for them. They're well balanced. They seem like they like each other. They're playing well together. It's automatic for them. And they're in that mode of when you get there as a team where it's just they're in games they probably shouldn't be at times. They get back in games where they're down. It just seems to all be flowing nicely for them. And they've surprised everyone to be a clear 1 seed with the record of 4 losses. Is it? I think to this point. So. Look, hopefully that record isn't in jeopardy. They've got 6 more to go. But yeah, they're playing really good basketball, and it's just going to be interesting to see if they can really, are they the OKC of last season? Are they a legitimate number 1, got to beat them to get to the finals, or will Boston still cruise through them pretty easily, even though they're a number 1 seed? That's the question. The next question for them, and the next phase of them, of where they're going and where they want to get to. But no one really had them dominating the East and the league the way they are at the moment. So I think that's a good pick. I think there were a few candidates. I had Cleveland as well in there, but because you've picked them, I can now go opposite. Indiana was one, but I'm going Sacramento Kings. They've had a tremendous week. They have won 6 straight, and they've beaten some good opponents. They've Malik Monk's numbers have just skyrocketed under Doug Christie, head coach Doug Christie, who's the interim coach at the moment. And after losing that 6 odd straight, Mike Brown gets fired. They've now won 6 straight. They've beaten Dallas, beaten Philly, they've beaten Memphis, they've beaten Golden State, they've beaten Miami, and the Boston and Chicago. So what's that? 7 actually. Yeah, they've won 7 straight. So and the Boston win was a relatively healthy Boston. They really punched them and took it to them. They're winning the games they're supposed to win. Golden State, they, blow them out and really, rub their face in it. They beat them by 20-odd points. Memphis, who's a tough beat in any given night. So they've kind of got it back together where it's respectable. They're in 9 at the moment, and they'll probably be in that play-in the way they're playing. They're 20-19 at time of recording. They're 1 game above, or half a game above Golden State in 10. Phoenix is that interesting one. Do Phoenix make a nice little push? They've changed their lineup up and benched Nurkic completely, which is interesting. But I like the way Sacramento is playing, and it seems like, you do see this rebound when coaches get fired. Can they sustain it, Pro? Can they, it's honeymoon period now. You got a fresh new assistant coach, probably a liked voice at the moment, something different, new and shiny. You won 7 straight, but when they go on that 3-game losing streak in a week or two, that's when I want to see how they react.
Both death taxes and then NBA teams going on winning streaks after major trades or a coach getting fired. It always happens. A team sort of shakes things up with a coaching change or a big trade, and usually they'll go on a little bit of a run. Sometimes they just need a new voice in the room for one reason or another, and it's working. So, great job for Doug Christie and those guys sort of pushing through. And they're a good team. They've got good, they got good talent on paper for sure. I mean, Sabonis, DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox. Talked about Malik Monk. Those guys are playing well, and it seems like they're sort of moving the ball. They're playing together, and they got a little bit more of excitement. I don't know why. Like I said, I'm not there. It's tough to really judge if you're not in the in the building. But for one reason or another, those guys are playing played a good style of basketball, and they got a little bit more of an energy now. I think, what are they, 10th now? 19 and 19 Bogues, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 9th. I'm sorry.
Just won their 7th straight.
Yeah.
Yep.
So tie with Golden State there. So that's good. I mean, look, they got a little bit of life. They got good players. They got good players. I love that arena. You played in that arena, Bogues, right? Before you went over back to Australia?
No. I think that was done in 1919. No, I got into Orlando's. I didn't play in Sacs, and I didn't play in the new Golden State arena.
Fan-fucking-tastic, Bogues.
Yeah.
This spot, it's a great arena, but the best part about the arena is the hotel that you stay at. First of all, you're not walking through a zombie apocalypse to get to the fucking arena like the other place. Seriously, it's like going through Sacramento is like a casting call for the the living dead. It's just it's unbelievable with the amount of people you got to characters you got to walk through. But this hotel is connected to the arena. You literally could take you take the elevator down all the way to the basement, and you walk across the parking lot, and you just show your ID, credential, you're in. It's unfucking believable. But anyway, yeah, Sacramento's playing well. It's it's good to see. Especially that they sort of rearranged the deck chairs of Titanic there for a while. I know you love those Titanic references, but they put a little bit of stopgap to it. Doug Christie's got them playing, and they're a little bit of exciting times for them for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if they can hang on and just solidify a playing spot. Like I said, Phoenix is theoretically should make it. Most people would pick them to make the 10, but they're having all kinds of identity issues. They've benched Beal, like I said, Nurkic. They're in the Butler rumors. Do they make that deal? Who knows? There's a lot going on down there in Phoenix, which, I mean, their slide from they were the number 1 seed in November, to where they are now is unbelievable what a few injuries can do in rotations, and there's no excuse for them playing the way they are. Weak team, who you got?
Both. Really hard to find a weak team.
I agree.
Really hard.
I had this in my notes. I couldn't pick one, but I've just picked one late.
Yeah. What do you got, Bogues?
I'm going to go with Boston. I don't think they've been playing
Lost
that
one in
well.
a row. Yeah, why not, right?
I don't think they've been playing well. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Right now, at time of recording, we'll follow up. 2 minutes left, and they're tied with New Orleans. New Orleans is down 1 with 2 minutes left. That's inexcusable, especially considering their last 10, where they've been kind of up and down. like I said, Sacramento smacked them and whatnot. Look, they're going to be fine. Very hard to pick a weak team this week, but they have to get it. You know, they've got a few of the team of the weeks where they've played really well, but they're in the dog days of the season right now, and they got to make sure, you know, they're only 2 games ahead of New York. You know, they want to try to make sure that they're on that upper half of the table at the end of the season. So they'll be fine. I'm not saying they're in big trouble or anything like that, but they haven't really played good basketball for the last 10 odd games, which says 5-5 in some of the teams that they've lost to.
Yeah, I mean, they're going through it right now a little bit, and it's hard for me to find a team. Look, it's really tough because I don't like to go with the bottom teams because the bottom teams are the bottom
Boring,
teams.
yeah.
So I guess if I was going to pick one, it would probably be Boston. I was going to pick New York, but the problem is they lost 2 of their losses come against Oklahoma City. So it's really hard to be like, yeah, you guys suck losing to one of the top teams in the league. But with Boston, yeah, it just seems like they're going through it, brain fog, just a little, probably lack of motivation a little bit. Some really good teams, you know how it is. Sometimes it gets bored. You just get bored. I remember talking to players that were on the '86 Celtics teams, and they said, look, sometimes you just get bored. Now they never got bored to the fact they had losing streaks, but when you're that good sometimes, and when you're just plowing through teams early in the season, sometimes you just sort of take it for granted. Wondering how much of it is like Kristaps Porzingis coming back, but he's been back for a while. But you're that good, you got to.
I just think
you're right.
They're
think it's
bored
the dog
with it,
days.
and they're just, as long as we win one, lose one, we'll be okay. But you want to be careful that bad habits don't creep in at that point. No team's going to go on these runs that we see Cleveland on right now. It's very hard to sustain over the course of a season. But you'd probably ask them the same question. You asked their coach Missoula the same question, that they haven't played their best basketball over the last, just under a month. So they've got some improving to do.
And you see Jennings, you see your boy Brandon Jennings calling out Tatum.
I saw that. The quote is, Brandon Jennings appeared on the Gilbert Arenas podcast. Quote, "Yo, is he the softest Boston Celtics superstar ever? If you're so tough, why didn't you get the MVP last year?" I think that's a bad take. I think, I play with Brandon, and Brandon likes to shoot his mouth at times like I do. Like, it's perfectly normal. But I think as far as correlating that to not getting an MVP, like, have you seen who's got the MVP the last couple of seasons, if that's your argument? And also, Tatum's got his championship. So I think saying he's the softest superstar in the Celtics history, that's neither here or there. There's a lot of hearsay in that. I understand why. At times we've both been frustrated with Tatum's game over the last couple of years, at times where he would fall into that avoiding contact, step back kind of vortex where, we thought that he could be a bit more aggressive. But I think he's been much more well balanced with getting to the line and getting to the paint, shooting the ball at a decent clip. It's tough, and look, he's got a championship. Like, you can't knock that. You can't knock that. He was a big piece of them winning. Obviously, Jaylen Brown's the other one, but I think I don't correlate individual awards to someone being soft. It's very hard to get those awards in the league consistently. But if your team's winning, you're part of it. You can't. If he hadn't had a championship yet, okay, maybe you listen to it a bit more. But I think a little bit harsh from Brandon Jennings.
Yeah, you may not be a fan of a player. Like, I'm not a fan of Jason Tatum's. He's an unbelievably talented player. It just, for me, just not a huge fan of his game. But when you're talking about being soft, now the whole thing, from what I've heard for a couple of days, was they called him soft. Now, I didn't really see it. I sort of read headlines of it, and it was like, now you're saying soft is superstar. But either way, he's not a soft player. The guy's dropping 40 plus in conference finals and throughout his playoff career. He's got a huge playoff career as far as how many games he's been in and how many important games he's been in, and been able to lift his team. Yeah, he didn't win finals MVP, but who cares? The guy's a really good player, really talented. Sometimes you go on these shows and, look, we're all guilty of it, I guess. You sort of get a little bit of a rhythm going, and then you want to have some type of a hot take. But, when you're just sort of putting a guy down for, the guy's averaging like 28 and 9 in actually an MVP talk for the past couple of years. The guy's
and he's on a stacked team, right? So, like, I think his numbers, if he's on a lower ranked team that's
Oh,
5 or 6 in the
yeah,
East, he's probably putting up more numbers. But I will ask you this though, and play devil's advocate.
sure.
Give me some historical Boston Celtics superstars that we've got.
All
Like
right, so you got
Bird.
Bill Russell, you
Yep.
got Larry Bird, you got Havlicek, you got Kuzi, you've got
Garnett.
McHale, you got KG, you
Yeah.
got Parrish,
Paul Pierce.
um, Paul Pierce.
So would he
So those
be?
are
Is he tougher
probably.
than all those guys?
I mean, he's more talented than a lot of
No,
them,
that's not the
but
question.
obviously,
So then you could
but
kind of say, as far as toughness, there was some tough names you had in that list. So from that point of view, maybe, but I still disagree with it because I think it's clickbaity shit where you call all people are going to see is that you're saying soft. If his argument is you're comparing him to those guys as far as toughness, okay, maybe
Mhm.
kind of towards the bottom 4, maybe. But I think as far as an NBA player, and I just like the fact that Brandon then followed up and said, because I think Tatum bounced back and said something, and Brandon
his
said,
trainer
oh,
did. Drew Hanlon, his trainer
yeah,
did.
yeah. And then that's the thing with Brandon is you can go at people would then just go to his game. You haven't won a champion. That's where it always goes, right? Which is perfectly
Sure.
normal. But Brandon bounced back and said, well, prove it then. If you're not soft, get me the MVP in the
Mm-hmm.
regular season, the MVP in the finals, and another championship. It's like, whoa, that's you're asking for a lot. I mean, SGA or Jokic are winning it this season. Let's be honest. But it's just
That gets way more clicks. Like that,
100%.
wording it like that gets more clicks. Now, if you really want to do it where no one's going to get offended by it, will you be like, all right, toughness wise, like if you're hard nosed toughness wise, how would you rank these guys? And then you would put Tatum in the mix. As far as being hard nosed and gritty, like not talking game, just talking about like toughness like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. If you rank him with all those guys, he's probably, near the bottom of the list, with Bird and Parrish, McHale, Havlicek, Kuzi. Those guys are tough, hard-nosed guys. McHale, like Pierce,
Didn't
Garnett.
Paul Pierce get
So-
wheeled off in the NBA Finals to take a shit?
That's the
Yeah.
conspiracy theory, but it was
Does it get much softer than that?
even if it was an injury, it was an injury. It was
It's a good
whatever
point,
it
Trent.
was. If you're getting wheelchaired out, like you can't be running back out. I think that's one piece that hurts his legacy a little bit. But he wasn't a tough, gritty guy, but he was a tough shot maker. And but to Pro's point, I think Brandon's wording was horrible on all of this. And if you're arguing those names, Tatum's, as far as a toughness, rah-rah out of those guys, he's probably towards the bottom echelon, but not a soft player, but just,
Nah.
but talent-wise, he's probably at the top echelon of that list, right? Like, and I think that's why he gets a bad rap sometimes. He's so talented that he can just cruise through games elegantly, move so nice, long, athletic, where it does look
Sure.
like he's not working hard sometimes, but it's just that he's got the body type, the athleticism, where you think he's in cruise control and then he dunks one on you, right? Like he's just got that kind of that body.
And he just doesn't talk. You guys can talk to this more, but he's just not a vocal
He's
guy.
not a rah-rah guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that gets mistaken as soft. He's more just about his business, doesn't talk.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's just, as Pro said, it's a clickbait headline. I think Brandon, if you could take it back, but Brandon's a double down guy, so I think once he'd said it, even if he knows he's fucked up, and then he's doubled down with the give me some MVPs in the finals, you're just like, okay. Pro, how many All-Stars do you think Cleveland are going to get or should get?
Well, Darius Garland's a 50, 40, 90 guy, so you'd probably put him in. You'd probably.
Mitchell's in.
All right, so let me see. You put Mitchell in,
Mobley.
and then now the question is, you get Mobley and or Allen, and you won't get and. It'll be one of those two. It'll probably be Mobley before Allen. You'd probably get at least two, if not. You gotta but then Boston's gonna get Tatum, Brown, and then the question is, do you put Holiday in or not, or you put someone else in, with that. Probably the. I don't know, Bogues. I would say at least two. I would say Mitchell, Garland are in for sure. And then, then you just got to figure out, I think Mobley's got the more exciting game than Allen, although I'm a huge Allen fan. He's on my fantasy team. But I would say they get three if they're going to be that number one seed. I'd say they get three.
Well, remember the Atlanta Hawks Pro in 2015, 14, 15 Hawks, their whole starting five made the All-Star team. In fact, I just googled it. They won. Their whole starting five was named NBA January Players of the Month in the East for that season, and they all made the All-Star team because their record was, I think they had single number of losses up until All-Star break.
I think the Godfather 3 had better ratings than that fucking All-Star game with those starting five making the team.
That was Jeff
That's
Teague,
just
Kyle
my own
Korver,
opinion.
DeMar Carroll, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford were the five.
Yeah, that game was sponsored by fucking Tylenol, by the way.
But point being, I was hoping to get a nod the year we had 73-9. I'm like, if we've broken the record, or we haven't broken it yet, I should have got just a little rollover effect, a little consolation prize to latch myself with those other 3 or 4 guys if Atlanta got one. But the West was much more stacked at that point.
Nobody would have been mad at you. Nobody would have been mad at you, big dog.
But I think, they got a case for 4. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Boston will get 2, if not 3. That's 7. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you just can't do that. So I think 3 is probably.
But then again, the format. How the fuck? I don't know what the fuck they're doing. Are they giving out golden tickets like Willy fucking Wonka? I don't know how they're fucking. I don't have no idea.
No one
how
knows.
they're fucking picking this.
It's going to be new and exciting though. Apparently, that's the word on the street.
But Bronny James got 8,000 All-Star votes. You see that? You read that?
Yeah, not surprised. Not surprised.
Imagine if you like on that team, like Max Christie's playing well, right? I'm a Max Christie guy, but like starting, averaging like 9-10 a game, and you look over like it, and Bronny James got more All-Star votes than you. Not that it's a big deal. Look, I know it's a popularity contest, but like, imagine if you're a guy playing minutes and you're like, I know I'm not an All-Star, but this guy never plays. 8,000 votes, and I don't have 8,000 votes.
It's a
the NBA is
system,
a funny deal, man.
It gets people talking and all that kind of stuff, but I guess the fans, some of them take the piss out of it, some of them take it seriously, some of them,
right?
I wonder if Bron's got some bot armies over there voting, so who knows? You just don't know. Zion,
if he's got some bots. If he gets some bots, he better increase the fucking payroll, man. If you're only getting 8,000 votes,
well, it's 8,000 more than he should have got, bro. So. Who knows?
Good point. 10,000 more, but go ahead.
Maybe it was a budget. Zion has finally copped a bit of disciplinary action, suspended for being late last week for one game. We've all heard there's been some issues in New Orleans with his professionalism at times, but constantly holding up the team playing, constantly being late to games, late to film sessions, late to practices, and that's. There was an old school mentality there at times when I was in the league from some veterans. They would always veteran superstars or max guys, they would try to always push the envelope a little bit, see what they could get away with. And I think this has been a long time coming. I think New Orleans has dealt with this for so long, but I think the cracks are starting to show that they might be distancing themselves or maybe getting ready to move on from the Zion era. The health thing is an issue, but then obviously the professionalism, weight, being healthy, being out on the floor, and then now all this kind of stuff's coming to light. So we usually see when these things start coming to light and teams have finally had the balls to fine guys for what they should have been fining them for 18 months ago, I think there's more of a push that tenure could be close, Pro. Don't know if it's this season, but potentially off season, if not the year after, they try to move on and rebuild with some of their younger talent and get on with life. But it's clear that I just don't think they're going to get that far with him as their main guy with their current roster structure, and I think they could get some decent pieces back. You'd probably look to make that move, but it is good to see a team pushing back, no matter how bad they are.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, Bogues, I mean, flights at like 4 o'clock, those fucking Chick-fil-A, those drive-through lines are insane at 4 o'clock. So, A, that one. B, why are you holding up the plane anyway? If they're not there on time, leave them. They should be able to fucking put them on Spirit Airline if they miss a flight.
We had Scott Skiles and Notorious for it. Like it was like 3 o'clock. You went on the plane. You hadn't called the trainer with a legitimate reason why. Like sometimes snow or whatever, you give a bit of leeway, or where roads were frozen. But if it's just like overslept or had your nap, all right, wheels up. Send him and the team would make you actually pay for your own flight. They'd help you book it, obviously, but they'd take it out of your salary and then it fucks you totally, because if you're going to somewhere where there's no direct from your city, if you're in a small city, Indiana, Milwaukee, some of these cities, and you got to go to Sacramento, There's no direct. So then you got to go.
No.
It kills you. You got to go puddle jumper somewhere and then get on another flight, and then it's a 10-hour travel day, right? So don't miss the flights.
And I think the problem with New Orleans with Zion, I've been saying it since his rookie year. I just don't know what you're going to get back for him, especially now. Like, if you're a team that has all these assets, are you really going to take a chance on Zion Williamson? Now, his contract's not guaranteed because all the weight clauses and all that stuff that he's probably, obviously, he probably makes his contract not null and void, but a lot less on the guaranteed end. But now, like, if you've got these assets, are you going to really give it up for Zion Williamson? I mean, the guy's never healthy.
Is it a risk if you're a smaller market? He's 24 years old, pro. That's what's wild about all this. He's like not even in his prime yet. Can you just get in shape? And he's look, when he's healthy and in the right mindset and playing 60 plus, which you haven't seen a lot, he can change games. So it's like, do you Miami? Do you take a risk? Do you say, all right, we know culturally, but that's maybe what Zion needs for his career. And that's a team that could hey, we don't fuck around here. We're gonna skin fold you. We're gonna fine you.
Folks, if that guy gets traded to fucking Miami, he's calling the FBI and getting put in witness protection not to be able to fucking show up. Imagine him with a Spolster practice and then all those weight clauses and all those endurance tests career, that they make you take.
This whole pandering to agents and your boys and your network of pandering to stars, what his friends and people around him should be saying is that's a good place for you because you need it. We're obviously not helping your progression in your career. You need to go get your ass kicked and be told the honest truths at times. And as much as you hate to hear it as an athlete, that could save his career and prolong it to late 30s where he's actually put in the all-star mix consistently and can win. But I'm just spitballing there will be a small market team that I think takes a chance on him because he's 24 years old. If he was 31, 32, you're okay, we've seen this story before. It's been consistent in his career, but I think someone will take a risk on this, give a big expiring contract and maybe a few pieces here and there.
I'll give you 10 names.
Would I do it? No, I wouldn't do it, but there will be someone that does it.
I'll give you 10 names. So I'm going to go to my database right now. And I'm going to go 42 to 52 on players. Because people think he's a borderline all-star. So I'm going to ask you, do these teams trade these players for him?
Straight up.
If you're Boston, you're doing Kristaps Porzingis for him?
Not in Boston's mix because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No, definitely not.
If you're Dallas, are you going to trade Derek Lively? I'm not trading Derek Lively for Zion, but that's just me.
Not in that mix, no.
Okay, maybe this one. Simons from Portland. You might, but Simons is putting up numbers. He's really good. But are you going to give up? Are you going to give up Simons for Zion? Maybe.
Yeah, that's a tough
Mikal
one.
Bridges. Are you giving up?
No.
Are you giving up?
Look, winning teams, top 3, top 4, no.
Yeah.
Rule them out. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But
okay, Scotty Barnes. Are you trading Scotty Barnes in Toronto for
no. No.
For him? Okay.
No.
So are you traded Johnny Bonds from Providence, Rhode Island for fucking Zion? I mean,
done.
Look, we're going through the names
No,
here.
but look, Brooklyn would never do it because they're Spurs MO, but that could be someone that takes a risk, a big name, big market. They get a star back, young.
Teams like Charlotte.
Yeah.
I mean,
Charlotte.
to take a chance.
Teams
right?
like New Orleans.
Charlotte.
Where he already is.
Yeah, New Orleans, right? I don't think Washington as bad as they are. I don't think they would because they've got all these other guys they're trying to draft and bring into it. I mean, I don't really know who does it. Portland, maybe.
Do you think him going to a team that has horses on it already where they don't have to rely on him would wake him up then?
I think he needs to go to a farm with horses and fucking lose some weight and go to a fucking team. I know a team that could use him, the Beijing fucking Ducks. I don't know who really is going to be I need Zion, but just because, look, if this is the Zion coming out of Duke, even his first couple of years, you'd be yeah, we're giving you, unprotected picks. You're giving you this, that, and the other. He's just not healthy, man. He just can't stay healthy.
That's my point. So if you get him to a squad that has a mid-tier team, who would it be? Like Memphis, let's say, or someone like that, right? Where you don't give up too much.
Memphis ain't mid-tier, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay,
who's Detroit. If you're Detroit,
Timberwolves, maybe?
No, not even Detroit. I would say, all right, Minnesota. Like you get rid of Randall, you
The
bring him in.
Vancouver Grizzlies.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about a team where you don't have to rely on him like New Orleans does right now to be on the floor to get you wins. Where you're like, okay, you want to fuck around, you're out of shape, you're playing 15 a night, and it's not going to affect our win-loss too much. We're only going to play you short spurts, or we're not going to play you. We don't have to play you, right?
So
like
Washington, Toronto, Charlotte, those types of
they have
teams
to play him,
probably.
Right? No, but they have to play him because they're bad. Like he's going to play 30 there. What I'm saying is he goes to one of these mid-tier teams that actually has some guys that are still stars.
Orlando? Or they get too many injuries?
A healthy Orlando. We'll bring you in, buy into our culture, but we don't need you to play 30 if you're going to fuck around. If you're going to not buy into what we're doing, you're not in shape, we can afford to play you 10, 15 a night, have you as an insurance policy. We've got a bit of star power if we need it in the playoffs, but we don't have to rely on you like New Orleans does night in, night out. Every game he doesn't play, they're struggling, right? And it messes their roster up, their balances up. That's kind of more what I'm thinking, like Sacramento would be one, right? Like you bring him in right now, you could afford to not have to play him with the way they're playing now, not earlier. They're at 8-9, but they've got some guys. Already got some stars on their team that can fill that void if he's fucking around. Does that then counter motivate him to be like, all right, like they've got guys that can play ahead of me that are just as talented and can put shit together, or does it do the opposite? Then he goes in his bag and doesn't want to play at all.
Fact or fake news? There's more dead air in this conversation with the Zion Williamson rather than is Tatum a soft fucking superstar. Fact or fake news?
Oh, it's look, man, he's 25 years old, bro. Like I get it. I agree with your argument. I'm just trying to figure out.
I get it.
I think there will be a team that takes a punt on him, and it's a matter of who it is and what they give up. But yeah, straight up trades like you're talking about, there's not many I would do in the top 50, top 60, top 70. I think it's going to be an expiring. Would you do it today would you do Zion for Julius Randle and a fill-in today? That's one that's possible, right?
Yeah, the devil is a lot better than the devil you don't. Look, these fat guys, Bogues,
Spoken. You have the license to speak on this, by the way. People out
without
there,
question.
If you don't watch the video,
he's one of my people.
Pro's got the fat license.
Yeah, I mean, I'm safe in New York because I can't fit in the subway, so no one's attacking me, so I'm good. But no, these fat guys, they're just weird guys, man. Like they're weird about, there's been countless, fat guys in the NBA in the last 30 years that were really good players. Maybe not as talented as Zion, but they've been talented players, all-star level players that could just never keep in shape. I told you, countless stories about Eddie Curry and things like that. And you got all this, and Eddie and Zion are pretty similar as far as talent. Like Eddie Curry was ridiculously talented, but like guys like that, they can't say no to it. It just calls them in the middle of the night. I have no idea why it calls me, and it's tough. But like Zion's just weird, and you're an NBA team trying to give stuff up. You'll probably protect picks. You'll give them, like you said, expiring deals. High levels, high contracts that you just want to get off your books. You might give them a little bit of talent, but it's just the factor of just you can't trust them. And I agree with you. Right? You're right. A team that doesn't need him should get him, but that's a lot of money to be getting off your cap to try to get the guy, and you don't know what kind of guy they are. Now, New Orleans is just a sinking ship. A year ago or 2 years ago, they weren't that bad. Like they had a lot going for them with Zion in the lineup. Like you said, he messes the game up. He's the most talented, unskilled player that I've ever seen in my life. Like he can't really shoot, he can't really dribble, and he can't really pass. But the guy could score 27 and 12 in a game just by bullying people. And he's got a sort of a part of his game that's pretty good. I can't explain it. I don't think many people can. But it's just like your reputation is like your credit rating. It's just like he's just got a bad rep. He's got a bad rep about being late, professionalism, staying in shape, staying healthy. That's pretty fucking bad, man. Those are like 4 of the 5 keys to being a good player, and you just can't be relied on. But I don't know what
Zion for Jimmy Butler. Who says no?
Miami. I don't think. Well, they might take him as a project for sure, and he's non-guaranteed. So,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think I'm putting this out there. Miami they could help his career, get it back on track, get him healthy, getting him right in better weather, can sweat it out a little bit more outside, put some rubbish bags on, garbage bags on, get on that treadmill.
But, dude, if he's in Miami, Mickey Harris is putting him right when he gets into Miami. He's putting him on a Carnival cruise line to fucking somewhere, and just fucking getting him out of town. I just don't see him surviving in Miami. But I agree with you. If you're dealing with Jimmy Butler and Jimmy Butler doesn't want to be there, like. By the way, did you read up on Pat Riley? Pat Riley sent video to the league about why he suspended Jimmy Butler. I haven't really read into it, but he said on somebody, he said on Termini, Justin Termini's show, that he sent video and other evidence to the NBA of why he suspended him to the Players Association.
Like practice video?
A 10-page letter. I don't know a practice video, but 10-page letter and video. Maybe it's those clips like him taking step back lefty threes against Utah.
Well, that's in an actual game. So they're actual. Imagine what he's doing in practice. It's like do you remember the Andrew Bynum stories when he was in Cleveland?
No.
I think it was Cleveland when he was there towards the end of his career. So I think Jarrett Jack was there with him. He was telling us he was crazy. At that point, he was just off everything. And they said in practice he would just pull up and shoot half court shots, the middle of the scrimmage, just shoot a half court shot. And they had that big issue with Cleveland back then. This is before, I think, this is after LeBron had left the first time in that gap where LeBron wasn't there, that they had to suspend him and kick him out, and then he came back, and then he started shooting more, and they just basically terminated his contract and kicked him off the team. This sounds similar to that. What do you got, Trent?
Yeah, so Bynum, yeah, you're right. But in terms of
Butler,
my thing with the Pat Riley thing, so pros on the money. He sent a 10-page letter to the National Basketball Players Association, as well as several videos showing the league why that they suspended Jimmy Butler. It was reported on by Tim Hardaway Jr. as well, Tim Hardaway Sr., a former player.
Oh, really?
So I don't know how accurate it is, but there's no report on what the videos actually were or contained.
Yeah, I would assume they've sent that to the Players Association because the Players Association was probably looking to put in a claim for excessive suspension and return of salary. So that's probably why I sent it to both of them. But
just back on the Zion thing, do you not think, just to you, Pro, do you not think Miami's system would work? You saw how effective he was in a college system at Duke, where it's a lot more structured and system orientated. You don't think he could replicate that performance for even a couple seasons in Miami?
The problem is he's about $70 million into his, NBA contract, compared to being at Duke. Being at Duke, he knew he was going to be there a year. He was going to be the star. They don't, even though you're with Coach K, they don't, they still don't, they treat you with a little bit with baby gloves, right?
Yeah.
And how they deal with you. But I just think, Trent, he's been down this road for a while now of just not being healthy and not playing and not really being regimented. Now, look, I'm not saying anything about New Orleans' system, right? It's about how they deal with player development and players and how hard they push you. But you're going from Disney World to Alcatraz. You know what I'm saying? You're going to be there every day and they don't give a fuck. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care. They're robots there. They treat you like robots, as they should in a sense. You got the best of everything, no doubt about it. They treat you like royalty, but they expect you to work. Not many NBA teams do that. They just they let the players run everything and oh, you want to practice there? That's fine. They don't treat you like that in Miami. They're hard-nosed as hard-nosed can get. I just think from going from one extreme to the other is going to be really hard. Now, I'm with Bogues. I think that if I'm Miami, you might as well, because you're either going to have to go in with Jimmy, he may not want to be there, right? Because we don't really know. We just sort of read up on the media and what we see, but he might stick it out. But you got a guy who's 36, going to be 36, that could opt into his player option at $52 million. He may not want to be there, and then you're not really going to get much for him. You get Zion Williamson at 24, 25 years old, who could come in, and he is a talented guy. And if anyone's going to push him to the point, it's going to be Miami. It's going to, there's a couple other teams, obviously, that can do that as well. but I think Miami would. I'll tell you another team that will probably, especially where they're going, is Golden State. Like Golden State giving up like Buddy Hield and a couple other players,
For Jimmy or Zion?
For Zion. Now
Yeah.
they'll try to get Jimmy for sure, I would think, because they need that toughness. But if you're Golden State and you got Steph that's on the other side of 30, obviously, right? He's aging and he's probably a little bit frustrated, even though, what have you, whatever's happening there's happening there. But you're not doing great. You're up and down. You've got this young asset that, look, you've got, supposedly one of the best coaches in the league. You got 800 coaches. You've got, the championship organization, all that. Do you take a fly on that guy to sort of rejuvenate things a little bit past when Steph's got to go? Now you've got him. I don't know. I don't trust him. So if it walks like a duck and it fucking talks like a duck, I'm going with it being a duck. I wouldn't take any chance on him, but there are a few teams that will probably like, you know what? We need to take a chance. Like Golden State, I'm not saying needs to, but I could see them maybe being a team. Miami with the Jimmy Butler thing, I could definitely see that. Toronto, I could definitely see that because they need a young player. I don't think the Spurs would take him. I don't think.
Not next to Wemby.
I don't think a team like that. Nah.
I agree. I think I honestly think there's a case for Miami. If I'm Miami, I'd rather take back Zion than Beal in that Butler deal. For me, I mean, Beal's banged up, older. At least it's a high risk, high reward with Zion. He's young. He's super young and talented. Like you said, it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. But if anyone can salvage it, for both of them, I think it's a win-win. But I think New Orleans, actually, when I ask you that question, they'd be the ones that say no, because I don't think they'd want a disgruntled Jimmy Butler going to a losing team.
Jimmy Butler, no, they wouldn't want it. They wouldn't want that.
I don't think Miami says no. I honestly think New Orleans would say no, and I think Miami would be somewhat intrigued by the idea.
Well, because you're moving on from you're going to move on from Ingram, you're going to move on from Zion. If you're going to move on from Zion, so you get Ingram and him. So now you're not winning. So now you want young players. You're going to bring back.
100%.
You want picks. You want young players. So it's a shit show for sure.
Finally, we'll just touch on Mick Cronin. Is it Mick? Is that right? Mick Cronin?
Mick Cronin.
Yeah, yep. Mick Cronin from UCLA, college coach. There was a press conference last week. We kind of shared it with each other a couple of weeks ago. They're not playing well, but caught my eye. We were talking about it. It basically just said in a press conference publicly, there were parts of what he said that we both agree with, which we'll touch on, but he basically said we're a soft team. I have the most energy as a head coach out of anyone. I'm upset with everyone in the locker room, my players and my assistant coaches, but I work the hardest. I come to work the hardest every day. Then he went on to say, which is the part I agree with, that players these days are really delusional. They're really nice guys, but they're delusional about where they're at talent-wise and how hard they work, and they're delusional. That I agree with. But as soon as you call out your players, but I think calling out your assistants and following that up by saying, I'm the hardest worker out of all of them, you're an iota, if you haven't already, from losing that locker room completely, especially when you're not supporting your assistants that are looking probably to be head coaches one day. It's a pretty bad stain to have in your name, pro, that you just get thrown in with the rest of the group that, so if I'm reading this, if I'm doing some scouting on potential future assistants that are, one of these assistants interviews for a job in 3 or 4 years, that's going to come up. Well, you don't work hard. You got to outwork by your head coach. Going on from that, they lost another game yesterday or the day before, and now he's gone on to blame the officials. But that caught my eye just as you're being involved in the coaching ranks, pro. I don't know how you felt, if you ever got that kind of criticism as an assistant coach publicly, but it doesn't go well for coach morale, does it?
No, I've known Mick Cronin. I've been around him for like 30 plus years. He was at Bob Huggins at Cincinnati as an assistant, and he moved on to different places, became a head coach. I think there's a certain frustration level, I think, with coaches all over, NCAA Division I. Today, I don't know if you saw that, or in the last couple of days, Rick Bonds, who's a head coach at Tennessee, subbed out one of his players, like first play in the second half. And he said the media asked him what he said to him. And he took him on. He goes, look, this is the first time I've ever had to say this in basketball. He goes, you're not doing what you're paid to do. you never thought, well, first of all, I'm sure he's paid a few guys anyway. A few guys, definitely got fucking paid from him. But what I'm saying is there's a big frustration level in college about players, especially with NIL money and a little bit of greed to it. But there's ways to voice it, and there's ways not to. And when you're bringing up first of all, your assistants and throwing them under the bus, and then then you're saying I don't have to do anything else. I'm 53. I got 500 wins. And then you're throwing out there, I'm the hardest working guy. I mean, look, we get it. Like, you're frustrated with your team. They're delusional. That's all you have to say. You have to say, look, I didn't like the competitive spirit. I didn't like how we competed. They're delusional if they think they're working hard. We got to go better. I got to do better. We all got to do better. But when you're throwing it out there like that, but like I said, now you've got all this money going out to players, and they're not doing what, if you don't think they're competing. It's one thing if they have bad nights, but you're not competing and you're delusional about it. I could see being frustrated, but you got to do it better than that. I mean, you never really, I mean, if you're gonna beat your assistants up like that in the media, you better be praising them by name throughout the year when they do well. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And Division I head coaches could be psychopaths and micromanagers and narcissists to the highest degree at some point. But it's just a bad look. Look, you're struggling. We get it. They're in the Big Ten now. It's a different deal. But yeah, by throwing your team and your assistants under the bus, probably not the best way to do it.
Yeah, I just think there'll be whispers between the assistant coaches as a group. It'll make them tighter, and I think it'll just alienate themselves from the head coach. I just don't think it's a good thing, and I think it's just strategically not a smart move. If you think they're not doing what they need to be doing from a work ethic point of view and whatnot, you need to address that to them personally. I just don't think you put it in the media, because you're costing them their livelihood, and the trajectory of their career can be heavily impacted. Like I said, like when we recruit coaches and get it right, you get it wrong, but you dig into all this stuff. All this stuff comes up, and then all of a sudden, if there's 2 or 3 people that say the same thing, you see this article, you're like, okay, that's probably not a candidate for us, and maybe it's wrong, maybe it's not right, but that's just something you don't do. You're right, useful, useless stat, Pro. Here's one for you. LaMelo Ball is taking the most shots per minute since Wilt Chamberlain in 1965, Pro. So Wilt Chamberlain in 61-62, 0.814 shots a minute. Elgin Baylor, same year, 0.746. Wilt Chamberlain, 64-65, 0.731. Chamberlain again, 0.728 and 62-63. LaMelo Ball, 0.728. Following him was Michael Jordan, 85-86 season at 0.727, Pro. Useful, useless.
It's useful to the fact that I would never want Ball on my team, but it's useful in the sense that, I mean, it's useless to be honest, but I mean, it's unbelievable that guy's, especially with like Wilt Chamberlain putting up 50 a game in those years.
That's my point. Yeah. And MJ had that one year in the 80s where he had to just do everything offensively, and you got, right. It's not correlating to wins down there in Charlotte, though. I don't think it's a sustainable way to play.
The only one to win in the Ball family is the brother Leangelo with that fucking song of his. That's about it.
Lonzo's grinded back, though. You got to respect that. I mean, we had
no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Cartilage replacement or some shit, didn't he? I'm surprised he's even walking.
Yeah, he's finally playing. He's finally getting minutes and stuff.
Yeah,
I think he's coming off the bench in Chicago. So
yeah, he's a good player. But I think it's useful just to show us how much LaMelo Ball is jacking on a bad team, and I think it can be good or bad. It can work wonders for his confidence, to just have that confidence of getting him up, and then when they finally get a team around him. Or it could do the opposite. They finally get a team around him and he still wants to shoot 35 times a game. Probably not the best thing either. So it'll be interesting to see which direction it goes in the future. The Sacramento Kings, since firing Mike Brown, 7-1 record. They beat the reigning champs, top 10 in offense and defense, held the Celtics and Warriors to under 100, and their best player missed 3 of those games, Pro. Useful, useless?
It's useful. I think it's useful. It just shows that those guys are, turning things around for one reason or another, and especially without their best player missing games, and they're doing well. So yeah, I would say it's useful.
Yeah, useful. I think Chris has done a fantastic job. I mean, they're looking to guard. They're locked into their scouting report, and there's a bit of motivation there from the honeymoon period of moving on from Mike Brown. And proof is in the pudding. They're playing good basketball. Last one, the Cavs are shooting 51% from the field, 41% from three, and 78% from the line. As a team this season, no team has ever finished with a 50-40-75 split or better. So once again, no teams finished with a 50-40-75 split. They're currently 51-41-78 pro. Number one, useful or useless, and number two, will they beat it?
Useful, and no, they won't beat it, but they'll come damn close. They're I would say definitely useful, but I don't think they'll beat it. It's a long season, but I mean, it's unbelievable, man. They've got Garland doing what he's doing. I told you 50-40-90. Ty Jerome's right there, 50-40-90. He's at 49-8, 89-7, 41-2. So, I mean, they've got some guys that are efficient as hell on that team. But I say it's useful, but I don't know if they'll break it.
Yeah, I think it's useful. Unbelievable shooting splits as a team. Can they sustain it over the course of the season? I don't think so. I think there'll be times where they might have an injury or two. Things will get shaken up. They haven't really had any adversity yet. They go on a losing streak. Do they lose a couple of tough games? And at the end of the season, is their record so good that they're resting guys, and that number might just go down because they have to play more of their bench. So I don't think that will stick. Aussie of the week, Dyson Daniels. Short week for him, but he gets the nod. He was the best performing Aussie. Only 2 games in this slate for him, but 14.5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.5 steals, 1 block per game in his 2. So he gets that nod. That's his 3rd. Giddy was not. Numbers were okay, but didn't even get his score in the double digits this past week. Was kind of streaky there. So Dyson gets that nod. For reference, Giddy has 4 Aussies of the week. Dyson's 3. Ben Simmons has that sneaky one that he got a couple of weeks ago. That's the Aussie of the week. Sit Pro. Finish us off with some fact or fake news.
Bogues. So Cooper Flagg, 42 points in a win against Notre Dame at home this weekend. Talked about as probably going to be the number 1 pick. My question to you, will there be a team that will there be a team that makes a big offer in a trade for the rights to draft Cooper Flagg? There hasn't been one of those in a while, but will there be a team, a playoff team, a good team, say like, for instance, I'm not saying this will happen, but like the Boston Celtics that offer like Jaylen Brown to get the rights to Cooper Flagg, like a team like that, not Celtics, I'm sorry, but a good team trading a very good player, like trading. Jokic wouldn't be a good example, but like not a Donovan Mitchell, but like a Garland or something like that, like a top 2, top 3 player on a good team, and making a trade for the rights for Cooper Flagg. Fact or fake news? There will be a team that trades for him.
No, I don't think so. I just don't think that it's a priority anymore for teams. I just think that everyone's so attuned to buying a big 3 or trading for a big 3. I think the cap situation doesn't help that neither. Like, what do you really get back? Maybe, you got to throw something in to match the salaries, right, Pro? That's what hurts you with the salary cap for the most part.
Yeah, but if you're a team that, for instance, like a Oklahoma City Thunder, right, and you have a chance to get Cooper Flagg, and you're not going to trade him Shea, you're probably not going to trade him Jalen Williams, but you've got all these picks, but you've got like Chet Holmgren, you get something like that. Would you trade out? They probably wouldn't do Chet because I think they're really high on him and stuff. But I'm just making an example, like a team trading a very good player. So it'd have to be a Jalen Williams or a Chet Holmgren, for the rights to him. Like a team that's really good will still be really good after trading for him and have this young player. Yeah, but I agree with you. They probably wouldn't. But
I don't think so. We just don't see it as much. It used to be fun back in the 90s and 2000s. All the day of trades don't happen much neither, right? Like there used to be Who was it?
No.
Golden State Orlando traded the one for the was the one for the two?
Yeah, Penny.
Penny
So it was
and Chris
Penny
Webber?
Hardaway
Yeah.
for Chris Webber.
That's right.
And
They
I
swapped them.
think, yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Orlando got like 2 or 3, I think 3 first-round picks.
Yeah,
from
that
Golden
was also,
State
there was
for
so
him.
much swindling going on back then, but now
Yeah.
you just don't really see it that much. I like that, the theatrics of it, but I just don't think it happens much. I think teams are so much more focused on, they'll draft their guys, develop them, and there's probably only really, how many guys would you think? Do you think the number's gone down of guys that can heavily contribute for a team every draft? Do you think it's gone down over the years?
I
feels like
think
it
so
has.
because of the I think so because of the youth. And look, Wemby, and there are some
I'm talking as a whole, though, because I
sorta,
remember my draft, like David Lee was second round. He was like starting for New York. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like he was, I think his first year he might have been coming off the bench, but he was like a 25-minute player as like a late second round pick. You had guys that were late second rounders that were playing vital roles for their teams, right? Like you don't really see
I mean,
that much anymore.
Look at Gilbert Arenas. Look at
Yeah.
Jennings was a high
Jennings
pick, but
he was a first round
yeah,
pick, but he was a lottery
yeah,
pick. But that's what I'm saying. You saw guys that were like Danny Granger was my draft. He was like late first, like was a bucket for Indiana, like playing big minutes. Like you had a lot of guys. You don't see that as much anymore. Obviously, your top 10 get it, maybe 15, but you see a gem every now and then in the second round, but it was en masse. Like there was some Monte Ellis was in that draft too, if I remember correctly. Like you had guys
Monte
like
was a second rounder.
holy shit! Like there's some guys at second round they're playing vital minutes for their team and putting up numbers. You don't see that as much these days. I could be wrong. It might be just my perception, but I don't notice it as much the last 4 or 5 years of guys, especially going in the second round, that actually play more than spot minutes.
Yeah, the second round guys, you're right. Like I think like late picks. I think Şengün was a late first. And don't forget, I mean, Jokic is the anomaly being the second round pick. I mean, imagine drafting a multiple MVP guy in the second round.
During a Taco Bell commercial. Yeah.
That fucking GM should be in the Hall of Fame already. Like that's it. You're in Springfield. Don't pass go. Don't collect 200. You're in fucking Springfield. You're drafting Jokic in the second round. And remember, they drafted Nurkic in that same deal and that same draft in the first round. This guy first of all, I think 27 international, 28, 29. I'll say 28. Maybe a guy to never pick. I think 28 international scouting directors should have been fired that year. If you're
That's such a
allowing
tough one,
Jokic
though,
to
like-
go in the second round and not draft him.
I agree, but like that was still an era. It's changed because of
Yeah,
Jokic.
I get it.
That was still an era where like your physical testing was so important, right? Like it was kind of my year was super important, and then it was slowly getting phased out, but not to the point where it is today, where it's like, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter anymore because Jokic just proved that the guy can barely jump over a piece of paper. He's not going to go out there and throw all the weights around the weight room, but he just can play basketball and he's smart and use his body and he's got that bit of overweightness to him that he uses for his advantage. I think that's changed. But back then it was kind of like he would have failed his combine, like the hardcore combine they used to do in the early 2000s. He would have failed.
Yeah.
There's no way he would have passed his treadmill test, like, coming out of Europe. Like, so I think it's completely changed, but it's tough to put that on international scouts. Because I think it's a huge risk.
No, you're right.
They had Nurkic.
You're
They had Nurkic starting over him for a number of years, right? Like,
Yeah.
But they always they could see the tendencies in practice as he got more and more comfortable. That's why they never moved off him, and that's why they ended up getting rid of Nurkic. So, but yeah, that is an interesting one. It is a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bro. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Thank you again, and enjoy your TV binging of your new show, mate.
Yeah, enjoy, fellas. I took down my my NBL notes for this week, but you guys don't need them, so don't worry about it. I'll let you guys handle
What
it.
were they?
We'll go from
I'd
there.
love to see them.
What's up?
What were they? N stands for national. Is that what it says?
Andrew Gay's rules. That's about it. So that's all I got for you.
All right, brother. We'll see you next week.
Enjoy, guys.
Yeah. All right, just finishing on some NBL stuff. Appreciate everyone's feedback on the Derek Rucker kind of NBL chat. I know a lot of people appreciated it, and needs to be more of those conversations around NBL stuff. I know the NBL tries to do as many as they can during the week, but the more people can have talking about the NBL and basketball in Australia, the better. So I appreciate Derek coming on, and thanks for all the feedback for that one. Wrap up the NBL real quick. Melbourne outlast Sydney. I was in Sydney for that game. Disappointing 3 quarters for Sydney. Just seemed like no life wasn't clicking, nothing was working, energy, effort, loose with the ball, turnovers, it was just it all kind of mashed up into one and just looked horrible. Somehow they get back in the game again, the fourth quarter Kings, and then just the way they lost the game was disappointing. Just a simple back screen from Chris Golding for Jack White for a layup. You hate to lose games like that. I would have much rather, Chris having to shoot a step back, side step three, or Jack White having to make a tough three. But we'll learn a lot from that. I think the film will show a lot of glaring issues that need to be fixed. Thankfully, Sydney go on then to beat Cairns in what was a tough game. Cairns, I think, I've said this so many times, and it wasn't just because they were playing Sydney. They're not a traditional 10th place team. They had a horror run with injuries when they went on that, whatever it was, 14, 15 game losing streak. Was it even that much? I can't even remember what it was. It was double digits though. They are a better team than their record, and I was worried about that game going in, and we had to grind a tough one out. Some calls didn't go our way, goaltending, a few other different things, but they managed to persevere and got a close win by 4, so that was good. Tassie Steele won from Adelaide late over the weekend, which was a very interesting game. I mean, Adelaide had that in the bag. I thought the game was close to over. Montrezl Harrell, I think it puts him up 12 or 14 early in the fourth down there in Tasmania. Starts going at the crowd, and I'm like, ooh, not the right environment to go at the crowd. Just get it over the line first, get it down to about 2 minutes when you've got it in the bag, and then bang, Tasmania go on a run, and Majuk Deng was just sensational, just making big shots all over the court for him. A la what he did in the final series in a few of those games, just kind of turned the game on its head and kept them close, and then they end up stealing one late by 1. Illawarra take care of New Zealand. The score wasn't, I commentated that game, the score wasn't reflective of the game. Illawarra dominated basically 3 quarters, and then New Zealand had a bit of a fight back in the fourth and came back, and Mooney got them back in with some big shots late, but they were never really in that game to give themselves a chance. Southeast Melbourne smacked Brisbane. Injuries all over the place, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, just a wider pounding of Brisbane helped their percentage. Really important win for them. Perth absolutely annihilate Tasmania, who are heavily shorthanded right now. And you feel for them, they just continue to get bad news after bad news. But Bryce comes out. Probably he arguably could have had another 40, but they rested him late in that game because they were up by so much. And I think that's the right decision by John Riley. I think like the 40 stuff, let's kind of get over that. Let's make sure that Bryce is fit and firing in another month's time once the play-in and playoffs start. So good job there. More games tonight to finish out the round. I think we're in the realm of the NBL where there's a game every night, which is good to see. So if you're at home, you can watch another NBL game tonight, which is cool. So Sean McDonald out for the season. Just came back from a shoulder. I think he's done something to his foot or his ankle, but they've announced him done. Kills him. Magnay should be back hopefully within a month after that FIBA break, but they might not get to after the FIBA break if they get knocked out in the plane. So they need him back sooner rather than later, and they've had to deal with a bunch of stuff there. Jackson McCoy was arrested upon landing in Sydney for the game on Sunday. At time of there was for an incident relating back to 2023 November. He was a Sydney King at the time. The first time we've heard about what happened was when everyone else did, when it hit the media. We had no idea. At the time when he was with the club, he was rehabbing his ACL, so he wasn't traveling with the team, but he was still on the roster, still on the team. First we've heard disappointing news. All we've heard out of the media reports were related to a DV, domestic violence event that happened in November of 23. So, a young player who has been in trouble with the law previously on the Gold Coast, I believe, 12 odd months ago, caught drunk driving. So he's got a lot of stuff that he needs to get right, and very, very disappointing if what's alleged is true. So we can't really comment too much more about that. I'm not going to comment about it. Don't really, honestly, a lot of clubs say we don't really know much. We were as blindsided as anyone. We were as blindsided as the Cairns Taipans were. It was apparently done. Landed in Sydney. Went to the hotel. Police were waiting in the hotel. Off to jail you go. That's all we know at the moment. So I guess more will come out. But disappointing for the NBL, for Cairns, for Sydney, for everyone involved. And we'll have more word, obviously publicly, within the next week or two from New South Wales Police on that one. The NBL changes a review rule mid-season, which is head scratching to change it mid-season, because if you're a coach that's been screwed by those calls up until this point, you probably have some gripes. Like, hang on a second, you've changed it now. It is the right rule change. It's basically referring to, it's still not right as I'd like it, but it's referring to if there's a review. Because what's happening right now is if I've got the ball and Trent strips the ball from my hands, it goes off my foot and goes out of bounds, but a foul's called, they go to the review and then they say, oh shit, it wasn't a foul, the ball's gone out of bounds. That's been going to a jump ball. What they're saying now is if it directly correlates to a turnover, the ball should be your ball. But the issue you've now got is if I block a shot, they call a foul, that block bounces on the floor, a teammate of mine picks it up, we've technically got possession, but a foul was called, that'll still be a jump ball, I believe. So it's discretion of the referees, I think. But those clear non-brainers, like if I've blocked a shot, it's gone to a teammate of mine, foul's being called, but we review it, it wasn't a foul, we've got the ball. We were going to get the ball. It's not a scenario where it's 5 seconds later and you're like, oh, well, everyone stopped playing because there was a whistle. If it's clear the ball was bouncing to a teammate, that should be their ball. I hate seeing the jump ball, but they've tweaked it a little bit. I still don't think they've gone far enough. You got to make it clear as day that if it's the second post the foul call, you got to teach players to keep playing to get the ball just in case. But it's clearly an obvious one off the foot out of bounds. That should not be a jump ball. That should be the other team's ball, and that costs you possessions in tight games.
Yeah, and you've said this since the NBA brought the coaches challenge in. Like, if you're going to have the coaches challenge in and you're going to go to the review, you're going to slow the game down, you want to get it right. Yeah. So I think it's the right rule change. I think, like you said, it's difficult bringing it in mid-season because it does kind of burn teams that have had situations like this. But I think it gives them a good chance to get it right for the second half of the season, and then going in the off-season, making those other tweaks in those other incidences where it makes sense to make those rule changes. But if you're going to waste time, you're going to slow the game down, you want to get the call right.
100%. And the thing is, like, if I'm a head coach and I'm going to risk my timeout, losing my timeout and losing my challenge, and then I get it right, all I get back is a jump ball, I'm like, what the fuck? It's not worth the risk, right? So you got to be rewarded within reason. Like I said, if it's not a foul and the ball ends up going out of bounds off that team, we should get the ball back. We should get the ball back. You know, they need to go a little bit further with it. But it's a good change. Shouldn't be done mid-season. Should have just waited until the end of the season. But I like the fact that they're trying to be proactive. I just don't like the way they've gone about it. Multiple injuries in Gippsland. This has been an issue in the NBL since I've been a part of it, at least the last 6 or 7 years. When we have games at non-home stadiums, so, you know, Southeast Melbourne sold a game to Gippsland. These courts are not getting NBL games week in, week out. They're not used to, you know, the way it's set up, the way things go. What if something happens in the morning of? How do we fix it? These arenas where NBL games are hosted on a weekly basis can put out spot fires quickly, for the most part, unless you're in Cairns and you can't find a shot clock, which now I think there's a protocol in place for. But generally, they get put out quickly because they're used to it. They're used to doing it. They're used to doing concerts. When you have no offense to people out in regional towns, but when you have a one-off event once a year, these things happen. It was very humid out there in Gippsland. I assume the air conditioners were on. I don't know when the court was laid or if it's a permanent court. Don't know the whole story behind that. But the players noted it was super slippery before the game in warm-ups. Walton Jr.'s now done his hamstring slipping on a wet spot, essentially. You watch the replay, he's clearly slipped on a wet spot, popped his hamstring. I don't know if it's the same one that he had trouble with early in the season, but he could be done for the season. Schuler's came out and said 4 of his guys now are banged up post that game. He doesn't even know if he's putting mayo on it, but he's saying, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to field a team. And it's because guys were slipping all over the place. We had a game, I was talking to Trent off air about it, back when my first season with the Sydney Kings, we sold a preseason game for the Sydney Kings versus Wollongong to Newcastle, in-state game. It's an easy drive for us. Bring basketball back to Newcastle, who had an NBL team. Be a great event. What we didn't know was that Newcastle Entertainment Centre hadn't had a basketball game for I don't even know how many years. It was years upon years, probably since the Hunter Pirates were there. So, you know, for those not familiar with the way arenas work, when they store the wood for the basketball court, they basically pallet rack these floorboards, and I guess they stood them all upright, stored somewhere in the back of an arena. So when they've laid these courts for our preseason game, don't know, they only laid them a couple of days before the game tip-off. The wood, you know, it breathes. It has soft spots, hard spots. There's moisture. And they laid this floor, and it was just seeping through with moisture. They could, as soon as you tail up a portion of it, it'd come back 30 seconds later. Or you tail that up, and then it'd come up over there. And so we'd got there the day before. We had shoot around the morning of the game. A couple of our guys went to shoot, guys that don't play a lot of minutes. And they were saying, man, we're dropping like flies. Like guys were doing crossovers and just falling down. So we're like, okay, it's the morning of. It's kind of a bit of humidity in the air. They'll get it right by tip off. Cool, whatever, right? We go back for warm up, 2 hours before tip, and the floor is the same. Like I go out there, I'm like, whoa, this is kind of ice skatey. There's, and what's the most dangerous is there's portions of the court that are fine, and then there'll be a small patch that's not. So you're running normally, and then we had guys literally doing the splits. Had a guy do the splits in layup lines. So I met with, we met with the people at the arena. Dave Anderson was the veteran on Illawarra. I met with him at half court. Said, man, like we can't be serious trying to play on this court. Someone's gonna get severely injured, right? It's gonna cost one of our teams a season. And it was 2 hours before the game, and we were insisting, like, hey, don't let the fans in because we're probably gonna have to call this game. Some other people were like, oh, let's just see how it goes. And my theory was, I think if you let the fans in, it puts more pressure on the players to play because you've got the fans in the building. Well, we thankfully had two veterans that we're not going to risk injury, right? And as much as we hated it, we wanted the fans in Newcastle to see basketball. They let the fans in. So they've started piling in. We're still trying to do our layup lines. They're cleaning up all the wet spots, and another one comes, and then we're doing our last layup lines before tip. Guys are still falling over. I met with Dave at half court and said, well, we can't play this game. So then the fans were pissed. They were all in the arena. We ended up doing the right thing, and we sat there. I swear we were there for 2.5 hours. We signed an autograph. Both teams set up their tables. We signed an autograph for every person in the arena. I believe they got refunds on their tickets, and we signed for wasting their time and coming down. We signed it. But to my point, it's like when you have events in arenas that are not hosting these games on a consistent basis, so much can go wrong. And this is a prime example of it. That the NBL needs to look at this. Clubs need to look at it when they sell games. You need to have dry run a month before, a week before, whatever it is. Make sure that, because there's nothing more embarrassing than this kind of stuff happening, especially with injuries. This Walton Jr. could have a case for, unsafe work practice, really. Not that he would, but he could say, I was working in, work safe. I was working in an area that clearly was not right for a professional basketball game. And now, with Southeast Melbourne bouncing back and playing well, turn their season around, 0-5, 0-6 start to being in the top four, they've lost their best player. So I think it's something the NBL needs to really look at, and clubs need to look at when they sell these games to arenas that don't usually host games.
What do you think it hasn't changed? Like the story you're talking about would have went back, what, like 2018, 2019?
19, yeah.
Yeah, so in 5-6 years, why is there not a practice or a due diligence done, when you do sell these games in regional areas?
Because I assume there's events, days leading up to that event, not necessarily basketball games or concerts, but they've probably got I assume it's a council-owned venue. They've probably got badminton rented out. They've got, volleyball. They've got casual basketball use. So they've probably got different stuff, and then they lay a different floor or lay different thing. That all probably gets done the night before. And then if there is a problem,
it's too late.
It's too late, right? But to my point, your bigger arenas that are hosting NBL games on a weekly basis, they can sustain a problem morning of. They can fix it. We've had issues 3 hours before tip that we've been able to fix because they're used to it.
Yep.
Whereas when you're in these venues with a skeleton crew that's helping, it's no disrespect to them, but a big no-no happens, like, oh, fuck, how are we going to fix this quickly? You just can't. You're not used to it, right? So you want to have games in regional places, no doubt, and I'm a big advocate of it, especially in the preseason. And I know some teams sell. New Zealand does this a lot. I think 8 of their home games are not in their home venue this season, which doesn't help you win losses. But they want to sell the game all over New Zealand. They've got a whole country that they can promote to, so you get it. And teams will make money out of that. So that Gippsland game, Southeast Melbourne would have got money to play down there. When we went to Newcastle, we made a lot more money than just having a preseason game down in Sydney, right? It makes total sense. So you get some money from that local council, city, government, whatever. That's how it works. But you want to make sure players' safety is the number one priority outside of the money. I'd rather not get that extra 100K as a coach or owner
Mm.
and we've got 12 healthy guys rather than getting 100K and then I've lost Walton Jr. for 6 weeks, right? Like it's then you're not making the finals. So it's just a tough one. And I think there needs to be some sort of protocol, and hopefully the NBL clubs all have, there needs to be a dry run a week before the game where our GM goes up and sees it all work. I don't know, maybe you have a practice session there with an NBL once. I don't know. You have something that you can make sure everything's good, and then you can flow into the game. Every now and then strange shit happens. You might have a leak in the roof. You can't stop that. That happens at big arenas, right? But I think this is becoming too common where guys are, we've passed kind of the decal phase of guys slipping, and now you've got this, which is kind of the same thing. So, and finally, at Kings Import, Lamonte Turner was in Sydney and he's gone already. So he, simple as Dave, did not pass the physical requirements needed for someone to play an NBL game, which is disappointing. You know, we put time and resources into finding him, we had him worked out in the US. All reports came back positive, but you know, just we did not feel comfortable having him on the court in good health to play a professional basketball game as of today. Could he have been worked up within 3 or 4 weeks potentially? But we couldn't take that risk with the way the season was going. So a big whammy for us because it was the nth hour for us to get an import. For those not familiar, all NBL players have to play a minimum of 7 games to qualify for finals if you make finals. That 7th game was against Melbourne, so had to play. You know, we would have, even if he wasn't ready for a couple of days, but would have been ready a week before, we could have just suited him up to get the number, but he was a ways away, so we elected to not keep him on the roster, which is kind of disappointing because then obviously created an effect that now any other guys were interested in at the time. It's too late, you know, with them being in the US, visas, all that kind of shit. It just didn't work out. So we'll change the way we handle that process from now on and learn some valuable lessons from it, but very disappointing.
It's interesting. I mean, obviously you guys have your different sources and stuff, but for a guy that was, you know, meant to be playing, obviously coming off an injury, for him to be as out of shape as you described it sounds like a pretty rare case. Like it
especially for a smaller guy.
Yeah.
You know, you have your worries about us big fellas sometimes getting off a plane, being a bit bigger than you saw him at the other end, you know, but for a smaller guy, usually not. But I think broken thumb from his last gig, hadn't played for 5 or 6 months, at least a professional game. Thought for sure like he can stay in relatively decent shape, but he just wasn't. And that's, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out. The flight wouldn't have helped, the jet lag, all that kind of stuff. But we wish him all the best. But we felt like it was, you know, if this was November or October, maybe it's a different story. You think, okay, you know, kind of the Jarrell Martin situation where you're like, you know what, talented player can really help us if healthy. Not healthy yet, needs 4 to 6. Let's roll the dice and see how it goes, right? We're not in a position to do that with finals being 3 weeks away or play-ins, right? So it hurt. But all in all, I mean, the league is, you know, I think the 6 is pretty much established itself. I don't think, I'm interested to hear your thoughts if you think that
I think you're right. I think Southeast beating Brizzy this round hurts them. Brizzy are going to have a tough game against Perth at home, which I don't see them winning, which then essentially kind of eliminates them out of the potential to make the 6. And then everyone underneath them are pretty much out of it as well, unless there's, you know, some crazy losing.
So Adelaide 9 and 12, they basically need to only drop 1 or 2 of their next, whatever they've got left. What is that, 21? They've got 8 games left. They go 6 and 2 at a minimum.
Right, and they've got Illawarra tonight.
Yeah, so I mean, some people are saying, well, right now 12 and 11 is 6, so it's probably going to need to be, you know, 16 wins, right? Like 16 and, was that 16 and 13?
So
roughly. So
that's
we'll be
7 out of the 8 there.
Exactly. So look, Adelaide's very close from having a line through them. They're still alive. Brisbane, the way Shula's talking, they're not healthy. They got banged up. They look like they're in trouble. I think the 6 is pretty close to. You've seen stranger things. Adelaide could go on a 7-game win streak and bring momentum in. New Zealand and Cairns, you can put a line straight through both of those. Obviously, Cairns easily, and New Zealand, you know, even if they win out, I don't think they probably still wouldn't even make the 6. But yeah, I think it's solidified itself. It's just going to be a matter of the juggle. Sydney fell from three. Sydney had a chance to be second, clear second. Lost to United, they fall down. Beat Cairns, but then Perth get a big win. They've got 2 games in hand though, and they've got some tougher games after Brisbane. So it's going to be interesting. And Tassie now with the injuries, they'll probably make their play in, but it's like at what cost? It might be a wash.
Yeah. Well, that's the only question mark I feel. Tassie with Sean out and Magnay still a ways away from coming back.
For him.
So they could slide, and you could see if Adelaide can be the Adelaide we know they can be. They can still make that finals push, but I think you're pretty on the money with the 6 being kind of finalised as it is right now. That would be my bet.
Yeah, the 5. I think Southeast is in and above.
Yeah,
and then I think there's 1 spot left for Tassie, Brisbane, and Adelaide. And if Tassie was healthy, I would lock in the 6.
Oh,
but
for sure.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I think Brisbane battled, and they've been much better. They must be commended for. They've shown improvement from last season. I think the question will be, can they sustain that into a top 6 finish next season? But yeah, Adelaide's an interesting one. They're just so hot and cold, and you don't know what you're going to get with them games. And they'll be. I mean, that they should have won that game against Tassie. They win that game against Tassie.
Much better position.
It puts Tassie at 11 and 12. Puts Adelaide at 10 and 11, and in the 6th, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that's the story of their season, though. And what we've said from the beginning and said pretty much every week since is like, you just don't know what you're going to get with Adelaide. Yeah. And, they keep proving us right. So until they can get to a point where they're showing some form of consistency, I don't know how you can go against
Super talented squad, though. Like, their starting 5 is
for them to come in, that 8th spot with the squad that they have is
they're
crazy.
Probably the most talented 5 in the league. And then you bring in Jarrell Martin as well, who's not in great shape, but gotten better over the season. That's a pretty tough. That's probably the best 6 from 1 to 6 that you can have in the NBL. They definitely should be better than where they're at. But obviously the turmoil, suspension, all that, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I know they want to keep some of those guys around long term, but it will be interesting to see what they do in the off season. They are not afraid of change in Adelaide. But we're interested to see if coach remains, interested to see if Davis remains long term.
If they fire the coach, man, I don't know what you even do. Like from an ownership standpoint, I'd like to know, but you can't fire the coach, not after 1 season already.
Yeah, at some point it's got to be. It can't constantly be the coach. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. Some people love him, some people don't. I've got some friends in Adelaide that like him and just say, it's time the players step up and start firing players instead of coaches. And then you've got some guys that are saying it's not the guy, he's not that good. So, it's tough as a coach. You're gonna get it from both ends, but some stability would be nice there, right? Like just maybe some consistency with their roster. I think could work wonders. I think just keeping maybe your Australian guys together, and if Davis stays, and then maybe complementing that with a few other imports and keeping the group together, I think for longer. Humphreys and that. Humphreys, I think, did a 2 or 3 year deal, if I remember correctly.
3 years.
So he'll be around, get Kadee back, Rasmussen's there.
Sunday back would be good.
I don't know what's happened to who's the backup guard that was starting at the start of the season, the young fella.
Nick Marshall.
Nick Marshall, yeah, he's completely
fallen out of rotation.
But that's from starting to no minutes, and he was showing some signs of putting it together. He's gone completely. They've actually gone with Rasmussen over him at times. So they have some pieces. If they can keep that group together and get some, just get some consistency,
Even if you remove Montrez from this equation right now, I still love their roster.
Yeah, they're a good team. They're a solid team.
Yeah, because you just put Jarrell in there.
You got an Australian bucket getter, which are hard to find. Keep Davis, and then maybe get another big import or 3-4 import, Clevelandish kind of guy. You got a squad, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see them together. I just hope. But what happens is when you lose, maybe another coach moves on, then players want out too. They're like, I need to get out of here. This is a toxic area. Maybe they get out of their contract a year earlier. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. But they are a very talented roster. It's just been a disappointing run thus far. That is it for NBL. More games tonight, tomorrow. Tune in, watch those games, and we'll see you all next week.